So I'm here with Steve from Plug and Play EV and Corbin from the Ionic Guy YouTube channels. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Well, thank you. How about you?
Very good. Corbin?
Doing well, thanks. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Thanks so much for coming on. There is so much going on in the EV charging space. It's really remarkable. And you guys were fortunate enough to participate in what I consider to be one of the most momentous openings of the year. And I really say that without reservation. Although there's so much going on, the BP Pulse Gigahub in Boston at the Logan Airport is indication of their intentions to follow through with the plans that they've been announcing. And you guys were there on site for day zero. So before we get into the actual discussion of the site and the event and design and all these things, one thing I wanted to touch on is I've never been in the Boston area. It's kind of up north pretty far. So unless you have intention to go to Boston, well, I should say that even though I don't physically go there, my rowing machine goes there every morning. There's a rowing app I use called Hydro, which puts me on the James River every morning. So virtually I'm there, but never physically been there. But I just picture it very densely urbanized to the tune of Manhattan or Los Angeles or these other major metropolitan areas throughout the United States. And that's always been my understanding. Is that a fair representation of the downtown Boston area? It's a suffocatingly urbanized, congested area.
So, I mean, Corbin's new to the city, but I'll hand over to him in a sec because he's closer. But I've lived in both Brooklyn, New York City, and kind of suburban Boston, I guess. It doesn't feel as claustrophobic, but there is certainly, especially around that area, it's a very densely populated area, kind of row houses, quite working class traditionally, and it is very tightly packed in. So it's more Cambridge and Somerville than some of the other kind of more bucolic suburbs. But Corbin, you're relatively fresh to the city, so maybe you have a different view.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the outskirts of where it kind of starts to feel more like the city. It still feels suburban enough out here that I feel at home, but just the next town over, it starts to get much more densely populated. Definitely not like New York City. I did live in Manhattan for a year some time ago, so very different in that regard, at least here, but downtown definitely feels pretty similar to New York City.
Yeah, and I grew up in the Chicago area, and one of the problems with Chicago, it was sandwiched between Lake Michigan and just a suffocating expanse of urbanization. And traffic was always a problem. And the reason being is because the city was built for a bygone era, not really designed for 3 lanes in each direction in order for free-flowing traffic. It's basically 2 lanes, and so street parking and very congested. And there's always kind of creative ways to solve the whole traffic problem, and one of which is Rideshare, in order to get people off and just opportunistically transport them, and perhaps cluster drivers who need to be gone between different points into a single vehicle, and several other things. But it seems as though Rideshare is one of the solutions for the urbanization traffic issue. And I don't know if you guys are similar in Boston to what it was like in Chicago, where it basically took 20 minutes just to go to the grocery store that's 2 miles away or something silly like that. Is that similar to how it is in the central portion of Boston?
Yeah, Corbin's having trouble driving his car enough, so over to him, he's much more kind of transit oriented than me.
I did mention that yesterday to Steve when I saw him. As a EV channel, it's difficult to put miles on the car when it takes 20 minutes to go 2 miles.
That's exactly it, right?
And your speed never gets over 25, 30 miles per hour.
Yeah, and I don't know if the rideshare solution is going to be this way to solve that problem, but I do know that it is definitely economically a viable path for many people to make either a side gig income or a primary income. And so it is definitely caught on. And as I understood, the Gigahub that you all visited yesterday for the launch event is designated by BP Pulse as a rideshare primary refueling location, and also a place where rideshare drivers can congregate waiting for their next fare. Is that a fair assessment of what you understood the purpose of the location to be? And Corbin, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I definitely got that sense from them. I asked them specifically about that, and they did say obviously all are welcome, but being so close to Logan Airport, it is definitely going to be their biggest appeal is to that uh, set of drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Logan is it's less than 2 miles to the south. Technically, Logan's in East Boston, and it's just right on the border. The Gigahub is technically in Revere, which is the next town up, but it's so close, and they're packed in because of the Mystic River there, which it kind of abuts. If you look at any of the videos from the site, it's very close to that. And then behind it is the Hertz kind of rental car station. So it oozes kind of rental and rideshare right from the off. And from the sounds of the folks we were talking to, it's going to be a big kind of draw for them, not least for the kind of pricing and the sheer guarantee that you're going to be able to get a charge, most likely, because everything else in the region is, or in that kind of area where you could drive to it, is more like 2, 4, 6 stalls. This is 20 stalls, and most likely you're going to be able to get a charge.
And also have a place to park. I mean, sometimes I would imagine in downtown, just free parking is a bit of an issue. I know in downtown Charlotte, there's no such thing as free parking. And having a place where you can kind of charge super slow, I would imagine if I was rideshare, I would show up there and I'd decrease my throughput to like 5 kilowatts just so I have a place to stay plugged in and park.
I don't know where you'd be going because there's not a whole lot, unless you're rowing down the Mystic River, there's nowhere really you can walk. It's very, very landlocked and kind of stuck with traffic.
Yeah, as I understand the rideshare business model to be for people doing it as either a side gig or primary income, the advantage of renting a car is you're not traveling with strangers in your own car, and you don't have to maintain the cleanliness of your own car. The rental company takes care of that for you. So as you say, being right next to the Hertz in order to get an EV and then fuel up at the BP Pulse depot, which is immediately adjacent, and then give rides to people coming to and from Logan seems to be a win-win-win business model for everyone involved. And so it definitely does make sense. And my understanding that BP Pulse's plans for the Gigahubs is in the 40 major metropolitan areas, put one of these at each one of the airports. And also the benefit that it would have, as I understand their broader strategy, is it also draws the rideshare people away from the public charging stations. And as you say, although it's not specifically designated for rideshare, if I'm a rideshare person and I want to earn a lot of money, one great place to do it is at the airport. And so it just seems to naturally gravitate the people and cluster them into that area and then liberate the other charging stations. So have you guys noticed in the Upper East Coast rideshare people clogging up public charging stations like what I'm referring to?
Oh, yeah. Any war stories, Corbin?
I mean, on my channel, I do charging testing, and trying to find a high power charger that's not sharing power with an adjacent charger is a huge battle round the clock. It's just, they're always bottlenecked with rideshare drivers, usually Chevy Bolts, Kia Niros, just those really slow charging EVs, and it makes doing charging testing really difficult. So I'm specifically excited about this location just because they do have the 400 kilowatt Alpitronic chargers there. I'm hoping that maybe I'll be able to sneak in there and definitely get a good charging session on some of my testing.
Yeah, for sure. I would think if I was rideshare, I wouldn't want the really fast charge to get me in and out of there quickly. I'd want to probably camp out a little bit in order to make sure that I have a free place to park and probably hang out on the Tritium and leave the big boys for other people.
Most of the folks that were there did seem to say that, right? They were talking about the models that are in use, because we questioned, the balance between four stalls that were Alpitronic 400 kilowatt kind of dispensers and the other tritium 150 kilowatt stations. But most people seem to think that the models are exactly what you're talking about, those Kia Niro EVs, those Bolt EVs, and the models that are going to max out at that kind of double digits rate, where if they split power even on those tritium PKM 150s, they're still having a good day. So it seemed to be well aligned to that use case.
And Steve, you visit a lot more of the local fast chargers than I do. You have a better sense of what's around here, but from my perspective, there is not enough high power DC fast charging. Most of them are 50 kilowatts, 150 kilowatts. Even on the Mass Turnpike at the rest areas, they have those Autel chargers that they just installed in the last year or two, and maxing out at 60 kilowatts. I actually sent an email to the Mass DOT a couple weeks ago, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Why are you installing antiquated chargers at these rest areas? And they actually got back to me, which I was shocked at. And they said that, oh, we're working with Autel. We just boosted their charging speed up to 120 kilowatts. So I still have yet to try that out, but it's just
you may be the hero of Massachusetts travelers everywhere, because nobody seems to get an answer out of the Department of Transportation. So congrats on that alone. But no, you're right. It really is. It's much more geared to, unless you're a Tesla driver, it's much more geared to retail. You know, a lot of these things are at the Simon properties, some of the malls around the area, which is fine. It works for the use case that they built them for, but this is more 2020, 2021 kind of time. Now we're talking about everybody flooding these stations, whether it's rideshare drivers, as Walter pointed out, free charging plans, people who just plug in, you know, even some of the stalls are adjacent to J1772, so you may get a plug-in hybrid that takes up a DC fast charger spot because it's, you know, staying on a 2 or 3 hour mall shopping trip. So this type of facility just isn't common up here, even with the density and the size of the population of Boston. So it's a really welcome addition to the area.
Yeah, in my area, someone opened up a free charger right off the interstate, and I know, and it was clogged up. I actually stopped by there one day just because it was a curiosity. They had put in kind of like a McDonald's drive-through looking canopy over it, and there's a person from Manhattan who had driven up into Bolt in order to do rideshare in Charlotte. And because it was free, he was there, he was fueling up, he was doing his thing. But because there was only one stall on many days when I would drive by, and it was a place I frequented with some regularity, there was typically a queuing line waiting for this thing. And, you know, as you say, the congestion right now is pretty significant. A lot of people doing rideshare needing to refuel in between fares. So let's talk about the site specifically. What type of hardware and what type of connectors, and what was your experience with the site overall? And I'll start with you, Corbin.
So they have, was it 2 or 3 Alpitronic hyperchargers, Steve? 2. So they have 4 handles, all CCS, which I was kind of disappointed to see. There was no NACS. I actually did reach out to one of the people who was working there. She got back to me. The LAX Gigahub is going to have a mix of NACS connectors as well as CCS1. So they are kind of remedying that. From what I deciphered from what they told me yesterday, this site has been in the works for a long time. So they acquired all this equipment a long time ago, kind of before, I guess, the massive shift towards NACS.
Yeah.
So that's why we're seeing so much. Oh, I mean, it's all CCS at this location. Other than these 2 hyperchargers, everything else is Tritium 150s.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
No, I mean, it's they, exactly as Corbin said, they explained that, you know, there's the planning timelines for these, as most of the nerds who hopefully watch us will kind of attest, are more like 12 to 18 months plus. So if you go take us back that far, it's only when NACS was really being kind of starting to transition to other models. And also the relationship with Alpitronic is much newer for BP Pulse and a lot of the vendors than it is for the Tritium chargers, which, you know, date back a long way on the BP Pulse locations under other parts of the BP umbrella. So the Tritium, I think, were already planned, and then they looked at the opportunity to slide in some much faster, higher power chargers in there. And I think we're glad that we got the 2 Alpitronics that we did, although I would have liked to see maybe 1 or 2 more just to kind of give it a little more balance.
Yeah, and I've been seeing Alpitronics quite a bit throughout the new installs. And one of the things that is a recurring theme with them is the ability to swap the cables out. And I'm thinking at some point in the future, they might swap some of the cables either on the Tritium or the Alpitronic or both to be a similar type of configuration where either it's 4 cables with 2 per stall with your able to select between different connector types in each stall, or, you know, 1 in 1 or something like that. I don't know. Did anyone mention anything along those lines during the event? Being able to swap out the cables? And I'm guessing not from what was described, that it has been in the planning phases for so long.
No, I mean, I would think it's quite possible. But if you think of the kind of context that we just talked about, the ride shares, you're talking about those older models, the Kia Niros, the Bolt EVs. The Bolt may come back with a NACS J3400 handle connector port, but that isn't the case at the moment. So probably a lot of the ones they're serving will be CCS1 vehicles. Corbin just has the 2025 Ioniq 5, so he's one of the first with the native NACS port. So he has more of a vested interest in seeing Alpatronic hyperchargers with NACS handles on them than most, I think.
Oh yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to speak with CJ Sharma, the CEO of BP Pulse, one point, and the way he described their strategy to me is the Gigahubs at airports, in Petro and TA centers, which are the travel corridors connecting the 40 metropolitan areas. They were going to be building out stations there. And then in each one of those 40 metropolitan areas, they were doing something called a densification effort, where stalls were being put in at gas stations that were run by BP. Now, that strategy, I don't think we've seen anything like that come from a CPO in the past. Generally, it's basically either a land grab or put it where you can, or partner with someone who's buying your hardware or something like that. And I don't really know if the jury's out, at least in my view, whether that's a good strategy or a bad strategy. Have you all heard of that plan before? And do you have any thoughts about whether or not that might actually be a viable path to alleviating, if you're a CPO with some property that you're being either building into or greenfielding, trying to mix it up like that seems pretty novel. And either one of you all can answer. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as they're leveraging what's in their portfolio, right? They have the travel centers of America, which make great sense to have all those Alpatronic hyperchargers going in, because that's the kind of travel use case. 400 kilowatts is perfect, as we've seen with other vendors. The smaller gas stations that they have, the Arcos, the Thorntons, are well placed. Sometimes those are close to airports, but it may not always be the case. And obviously, those are quite often smaller footprint. So these dedicated sites that they're building, the Gigahub is the first in Boston, but then they have the one in Inglewood near LAX, which is going to be about 2-3 times the size of it by the sound of it. Down in Dulles, there's one going in. So these are going to be much more geared to the type of needs that rideshare drivers have, I think. And that sheer capacity and ability to kind of soak up that is much greater than any gas station would in those areas, I think. So it really comes down to what they've got in their portfolio, and they're trying to serve those drivers. They're partnering up with the likes of Hertz to deliver these sites, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
And Corbin, any thoughts?
Nothing really for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they actually thought it through. It's so unusual. Most of the time, it's just like, well, all right, well, where can we put these things? At least it seems as though BP actually thought this whole thing through from the...
The only kind of parallel that I see is maybe with EVgo, although that is with Pilot Flying J having the travel centers, that's more of a slightly different model. But EVgo only really has a travel network in any sense because they're partnered with Pilot Flying J, because they have those locations off the interstate. Otherwise, before that, EVgo was very heavily focused on densely populated areas, going where the EVs were, which is why you see so much of their population in California, and so many of the sites kind of popping up around urban centers, cities, that kind of thing. So it's some parallel, but it's a different model, because BP has the associated properties to go and kind of make money off this. So bring people into TCA, bring people into the gas stations, that sort of thing. But the Gigahubs are a little bit different. It'll be interesting to see if they can make any money out of them, because there's a lot of power going through those sites. And if it's like the one that we went to yesterday, there's no associated kind of side revenue model, at least not retail. Maybe there's something with the rideshare drivers, maybe there's something with those companies like Hertz and the rental companies, but not something we're privy to, unfortunately.
Yes, some kind of membership discount for rideshare being extended. That would be interesting, and maybe the case in order to increase the brand affinity, I guess the way of describing it. But let's talk about the event itself. You both were attending a very special historic event. And while you were there, other people who were coming by, I'm assuming there's a similar vibe of excitement. And what did yourselves and other people think of the event, the marking of the history, and maybe the perspective was lost. But this is, major deal that we're opening up something like this in the United States. This is the first one that they're opening, and you all happen to be there on day 0. So what was the vibe? And I guess, Corbin, can we go with you first?
Sure. Yeah, when I arrived there an hour after the opening, there were only a couple other people there. I was honestly kind of surprised there weren't more people at the event. But they had a coffee station and a food truck came later. But the general feeling from everybody at BP and the few people that were there charging was excitement. One of them actually drives for Rideshare, so he was exceptionally excited about it. I really like the idea of this site. I think there could be some more things if they are catering towards rideshare drivers to kind of improve it, though. There's no restrooms other than the Starbucks up the street. It's kind of secluded. I can see a lot of people going up to the chain link fence to relieve themselves in the middle of the night. And Steve, I don't know if you experienced this when you left yesterday, but that intersection to get out of there is truly just a nightmare.
I did a video. I got blocked off by a big rig just as I was pulling out. So that was I was actually glad of it because it kind of made the video, made my point that I've been kind of thinking may be the case for every time I visited. But yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. I think the event was more to kind of pre-launch the site, raise awareness. So I think it was 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Specifically. So I think people just filtered through. I left a bit after Corbin. He arrived a bit before me. We saw a decent, steady stream of EVs. We had a bunch of Ioniq 5s, F-150 Lightning came through, a bunch of BMW iXs, interestingly, so several of those. So there's a good selection. I didn't see a whole lot of rideshare drivers, but again, they were probably looking to different timing to come through. So it was really, as an event, I think it was solid. It raised awareness. They asked us to review the site on Google, so they're on their SEO game, and I can appreciate that as a marketer. So they were pushing stuff through the site and trying to get people's feedback. They had some people on hand to give us more information. I think that's the question mark is they had catering on site, they had the coffee on site, so that was great for us, but that's gone after the event finishes. So you have that Starbucks up the road, which has the usual Starbucks business hours. Think about rideshare drivers coming in all hours. This is going to be pretty close to a 24/7 facility. And really, they had the Wi-Fi, which was great. I thought that was a good, nice touch, the complimentary Wi-Fi. I need to go back at night to see how the lighting holds up, but really there's no way you would want to walk. You're not really going to be able to get to the Starbucks unless it's within those business hours. So I think there's still open questions about, we talked about luxury porta cabins and kind of those porta potties that can be quite pleasant. I think it needs some kind of site maintenance contractor or somebody to go through. I don't actually think I saw any trash cans either as I was there. So there's still some stuff to be buttoned up, but maybe that's the nature of the kind of beast when you have these site commissionings.
And I did ask them specifically if they potentially reached out to Hertz to see if they could kind of cut some deal with allowing people to use their restroom there. And they said it was something maybe they would consider looking into.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. And I would imagine if there's a pool of drivers in a vicinity, someone's going to invent a way in order to provide services to them one way or the other. So we'll see what the future holds, but still very exciting event. Much appreciated, gentlemen, for bringing it to us, and look forward to what the future may hold here. This is a very exciting time in which we find ourselves, but thank you both very much for coming on this evening.
Thanks, Walter.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.